Hey everybody, how you doing? It's Sean from Ridesharing101.com. And hey, I want to talk to you about pool rides today because I was watching a video by the rideshare professor, and he was reporting on a story about an Uber driver and a passenger that were killed by another passenger. And this was a pool ride. And evidently the driver picked up passenger A, everything was going smoothly. They pick up passenger B. Reportedly, passenger B was on PCP, and for whatever reason, he whipped out a gun and shot the passenger and the driver. So, Rideshare Professor is basically calling for an end to UberPool. And I wanted to talk a little bit about this because I've written an ebook and I talk about my opinion has always been, for the last 5 years, not really to take UberPool because it's not really worth it. So I thought I would kind of talk about how I feel about UberPool and give you a little bit of history first and kind of explain some things you can do and things maybe you shouldn't do. So basically, back in the day, before there was rideshare and you just took a taxi and you paid cash, sometimes you could split a ride with somebody. If you were having a hard time finding a cab, let's say it was raining and you're trying to flag down a cab and you see somebody else, you'd be like, hey, you trying to get a cab too? Yeah, okay, me too. Hey, where are you going? Oh, I'm going, this was when I lived in New York. Oh, the Upper West Side. Oh, I'm kind of going up there too. Do you want to split a cab? Oh yeah, that would be great. Now, when you're talking to the person, you can get a sense of their mental state. You can tell if they're slurring their words, if they're drunk, or if they're kind of pinging all over the place. Maybe they're on, meth or coke or whatever. And generally you could be like, hey, where are you going? Oh, I'm going to Upper West Side. You'd be like, oh, okay, yeah, oh, that's too bad. I'm going to East Village. Oh, hey, why don't you get the next cab? I'll get the one after. And what you would do is the driver would come up like, hey, driver, we're going to make 2 stops for splitting the cab. Is that okay with you? Yeah, it's okay. First guy would get out. He'd be like, oh, the meter's at $12 here. You're going up twice as far here. How about I give you $10? That's cool? You're like, yeah. The driver's cool. He saw that there was some money. He knew he was going to get paid. He wasn't going to get stiffed. And as I say, all is well with the world. All right. Well, it used to be when Uber started, it was just you would do UberX. And then they introduced UberPool. And back in the old day, you opt in for UberPool. You didn't have to take UberPool. And then they were really pumping it. And they had a couple of weekends where they did basically sort of anywhere in most of the city, most of San Francisco, was $4. And this was back when you had surge. So like early on a Saturday, I remember picking up one guy by the airport, somebody else, it was a pool ride, and it was like 4.5 surge or whatever. And I remember taking 2 people basically by the zoo, dropping the last guy off downtown, and it was like $70. It was insane. It was great. Back in the day, you could still kind of make money with UberPool when there was a surge. And then they changed everything around really quick, and that wasn't happening. And they did it several weekends of $4 anywhere in the city. I think Lyft followed suit. Then when they updated the app, it was just UberX and UberPool. You didn't really have a choice. And then, if UberPool came up, you just would let it go if you didn't want to take it. And from the beginning, I was never, except for that one period when there was lots of surge, UberPool didn't make a lot of sense because people weren't always where they were supposed to be. You might pick up passenger A and then pick up passenger B, and the first passenger expected to be dropped off first. And you're like, well, that's not how it works. It's telling me I have to drop off this other passenger. Oh, well, hey, that's not right. I'm late. You should drop me off first. And it's like, it's not my fault you were late, that you got a slow start, So, and there's just a bad, I don't want to say bad precedent, but there is a bad opportunity to have incompatibility issues. Okay? And by that I mean you could have people with race, politics, religion, sexism. You could pick up a male passenger and maybe you pick up a female passenger, and maybe he starts hitting on her. Maybe you have a white passenger not getting along with a Latin passenger. Maybe a black passenger not getting along with a Latin passenger. Maybe you have somebody that's very liberal, and he sees somebody wearing a Reagan t-shirt, very conservative, and that starts a conversation. Maybe somebody that has an anti-abortion t-shirt, and you pick up a female passenger that doesn't share the same view. There's lots of opportunities for things to go haywire. And so that's, I once had, well, here, let me finish up and I'll tell you a couple of stories, some examples of stuff that was like not so hot. Normally, when you have UberX, I always say keep the door locked. You roll down the window. Hi, are you Bob? Yeah, okay. Who are you here for? And he'll say, you. Okay, what's my name? Oh, I don't know. And then I've had somebody else come up. Hey, that's my car. And you're like, who are you? I'm Bob. Oh, okay. Who are you here for? Sean. Okay, that's me. And someone's like, oh, I'm here. There's lots of confusion. You get drunk people that don't know, like, oh, are you Bob? Oh no, I thought you said Tom. No, buddy. So you get drunk people, a lot of confusion. The only time I will really take UberPool is sometimes Uber offers bonuses. You take so many rides, like let's say you give 40 rides, you might get an extra $40. And it might be the end of the week, end of that promotion. So I need to bang out, like, let's say 3 rides. As soon as I bang out 3 rides, I can go. So what I do is I see that a fare comes up. Oh, it's UberPool. Okay, I'll accept it. I know you're running the risk of stuff going wrong, but generally I only drive during the day. I don't drive at night, so I avoid a lot of problems. Now, some things that have gone wrong before is I've had a male passenger, and he was on the phone with an Uber driver because his friend had left his phone in this other Uber driver's car. His friend had to go out of town, so he was helping his friend get his phone back. And he was supposed to meet this Uber driver the previous night, but the guy didn't show. And now he's on the phone, and the Uber driver's basically trying to shake him down, like saying stuff like, how do I know it's really even your phone? Well, I need money, it's my time. And the guy is getting upset. Well, this was when it was UberPool. He talked to the guy, got a little upset, and then the guy hung up. Female passenger gets in. The Uber driver calls the guy back, and then the guy starts yelling into his phone. And I'm like, yo, buddy, there's other people in the car. And the guy's like, oh, I'm sorry, but this other guy is, And I'd picked this guy up in the Mission, probably 16th in Valencia or whatever. And I was like, hey, it's okay. I'll tell you what, the Uber hub, the Uber office is open, and it's like 5 blocks away. I'll drop you off there. You can go in and report this driver to Uber, and they can help you get your buddy's phone back. Oh, really? Yeah, that would be great. And I turned to the other passenger, hey, you don't mind, do you? And I'm like, and she's like, oh yeah. So I dropped the guy off. I'm like, hey, it's right up those stairs. They can help you out. And he's like, oh, thanks, man. I really appreciate it. I'm like, okay, that's cool. But hey, you were really swearing and stuff. You should really give this other passenger a ride, because you were kind of freaking us both out. And he's like, oh yeah, man, I'm sorry. Yeah, okay, go ahead. I'm like, okay, so I'm not going to stop the ride. I will stop it when I drop her off. Okay, I have your okay to do that. He's like, yeah, that's okay. I'm sorry. And she's like, oh, okay. So he goes up the stairs, and then, because I was a little freaked out because this guy's sort of swearing, and she goes, what the F was that about? But she was kind of laughing about it. And I'm like, oh, and I told her the story, and she's like, oh, it's nuts. I'm like, so where do you want to go, San Jose? And she laughed. She's like, no, I'm only actually going a few blocks. It's cool. I'm like, you sure you don't want to go anywhere else? It's on his time. She's like, nah, it's cool. I'm meeting somebody. And actually, I wrote about this, and it's a story that will get posted to the website in the future. there's another story where it's early in the morning and I pick up a guy, and then we pick up this woman at Dunkin' Donuts, and the guy turns to her and is like, "Hey, how you doing?" And it's kind of like, I'm like, I think dude is like hitting on her, and she doesn't say anything, and I'm like, "Hey," I say it kind of loud. I'm like, "Betsy," or whatever her name is, "are you okay back there? You're kind of quiet." And she's like, "Oh, I'm sorry, I have my earbuds in. I'm sorry, I didn't realize you were talking to me." I'm like, "Oh no, it's okay. You were kind of quiet. I just want to make sure you're all right." And then a little further on is when the guy's stop was, and he gets out. And then I hear her say, "Oh, it's him." And I'm like, "Oh, do you know him?" And she's like, "Yeah, I didn't recognize him." I'm like, "Oh, because he turned to you and he was like, 'Hey, how you doing?'" She's like, "Oh, I didn't hear him." And I'm like, "Oh, I thought he was kind of hitting on you. That's why I asked if you were okay. I just wanted to make sure he wasn't like, trying to put the moves on you. I wanted to make sure you were comfortable." And she's like, "Oh, no, it's okay. He's actually a really nice guy." And I'm like, "Oh, okay," because I wasn't sure. And she's like, "Well, yeah, actually, we dated for a bit." I'm like, "Oh, geez." I'm like, "Oh, you might want to let him know," because he seemed kind of bummed. And she's like, "Yeah, I got his number. I'll call him later on today." So, but that could have gone terribly, terribly wrong. And if you have to take UberPool, one thing that I suggest you do is just make sure that your passengers feel safe. So a lot of times I'll pick somebody up, and I have noticed a lot of times Uber, at least the rides I've taken in San Francisco, if a woman gets in first, usually the trip, it's mostly all women. Occasionally they throw a man in, but most of the time it's all one sex. But a woman gets in, and I generally make small talk with people. "Hey, how you doing?" Especially in the morning. "How you doing today, or is it too early to tell?" And then that usually gets a laugh. I'm like, "Oh no, I'm doing okay." I'm like, "Okay, I see you're going downtown. I hope you're not going to work, are you?" "Oh no, I'm going to like Barry's Boot Camp or Soul Cycle." So that's somebody that's going to the gym to exercise. I'm like, "Oh, you're exercising. Good for you." And then I'll see that a pool ride comes up, and I say, "Oh, hey, got another pool ride, and this one looks like we're picking up John a few blocks away." And I say, I tell all my female passengers this. Since it's a pool ride and we're picking up other passengers, you're more than welcome to sit up front with me if you feel comfortable. If you don't mind sitting next to, a 53-year-old guy that's probably older than your dad. And they're like, "Oh, you're 53? And I'm like, "Yeah." And they're like, "Oh, you look so much younger." I'm like, "Oh, yeah, thank you." I go, all the women tell me that's a compliment. And they're like, "Oh, yeah, I'm like, "Well, you can come up front if you want, or you can stay back where you're at. It's up to you. I just want you to feel comfortable and safe." Like, "Oh, thank you. I appreciate that." And half the time they'll get up front, another half they'll just stay in the back. And I don't really push it. But I keep the door locked. When I roll up, I'm like, "Hi, how are you doing? Are you John?" "Yes, I am." "Okay, who are you here for?" They're like, "You're Sean, right?" I'm like, "Yes, I am." And then they get in. And usually from that brief interaction, you can kind of tell if they're tweaking, if they're pinging around, what their eyes look like. Because I'm looking out the window at them. I pull up next to them and I keep it locked. I'm like, hold on. I roll the window down. "Hold on. I just need to verify who you are." And, they're a little annoyed, but I don't really care because I want to be safe too. And I know people that, when people get in, they don't want them behind them. So they're like, "Hey, just for safety, do you mind scooting over? Because I really don't like people behind me. I've had bad experiences before." And, and if they want to be tough guy or if they want to be rude, they're like, "No, I'm happy here." You can just stop the car and say, "Hey, I don't feel comfortable, so I need to cancel the ride then, and you need to get out." And turn off the engine, grab your keys, grab your phone, and get out. And open their door and say, "I'm sorry, I'm going to cancel. You have to get out. That's not something I'm comfortable with." They can complain, whatever, but it's your safety. So it's your car, it's your rules. So you need to be careful and do what you need to do. And then, other drivers I know, they might carry mace, other weapons, quote unquote. You can interpret that however you want to. But what I tell people is, if you carry anything, especially something that's against Uber's terms of service, they could theoretically deactivate you, but they'd have to find out. So I wouldn't maybe announce that unless you feel like you're about to use something. But anything that you can use can be used against you if you're overpowered. So I just want to throw that out there. I'm not advocating violence. I'm advocating being careful, and you can interpret that however you want. But with the death of this Uber driver and his passenger, I felt it kind of relevant to sort of revisit this topic and talk a little bit about pool rides and, you know, what could go wrong and maybe what you should look out for. So the best thing is you stop the problems before they enter your space. So talk to people through the locked door. Roll down your window and talk to them and see what they're saying and how they're acting when you talk to them. And go with your gut. If they're acting really kind of weird or they're giving you a really weird vibe, say, oh, you know what? I'm sorry. I've got an emergency. I have to go. And then just take off. Who cares if your rating suffers or whatever? It's your safety that matters. Because Uber's not going to give a damn about you if you get hurt. Your family will. Protect yourself and look out for your loved ones. Okay? So with that in mind, please be safe. Stay away from those UberPool rides if you can. All right. This is Sean from Ridesharing101. Be safe.